Hey everyone, and welcome to today's session on what's new with Amazon S3. My name is Christoph Bartenstein, and I'm the Director of Product Management here in S3. And I'm really excited today to show you all the new features which we have launched over the last weeks. It's a full 30 minutes, so let's get into it. Really, my goal today is talking about all the new features we have launched, provide a little bit updates into how customers use these features and provide some of the best practices. And so we'll start talking a little bit about why so many customers use S3 for their data lake, why so many customers store their storage in S3. And then we'll talk directly about the features, what they're doing, and in what areas they really help customers today for all different kinds of use cases. And before we start with that, let me say thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you to our customers for using S3. Thank you for helping us to innovate. And at the end of the day, you're really the reason why we're here, why we innovate. And thank you for all the feedback. And because of that innovation, S3 and AWS is recognized in industry. So if you look at the latest Gartner report at the Magic Quadrant 2020, then AWS is recognized again as the cloud leader, and it's its 10th consecutive year. And if you look at the report, then there are a couple of highlights there. And one of the highlights is the fast pace of innovation. And the fast pace of innovation is also something I want to talk about, the pace of innovation in S3, in storage. So let's talk about that. When you step back for a moment and think about why so many customers around the world, across every industry, store their data in S3, there are really a few reasons. So you have exabytes of storage, you have trillions of objects, and you have tens of thousands of data lakes in S3. And the reasons why so many customers store their data in S3 is really because of the industry-leading scalability, availability, and resiliency. It's very easy to manage data in S3. You have best practice security features. You have the broadest data movement options. You have unmatched security as well as cost optimization capabilities. And all that are a few reasons why so many customers choose S3. And so the features we'll talk about next, they really are about all these areas. So let's get into it. Let's start with cost. And let's start with cost and performance because so many discussions, so many conversations start with cost. And it has to do with the cloud and how much more cost-effective the cloud is. And so when we think about cost in S3, you think about storage classes and you think about how you can store your data best. When you think about the storage classes, we have many storage classes. We launched over 7 storage classes over the last years. It starts with S3 Standard, which is optimized for frequently accessed data. If you have infrequently accessed data, you go to Standard Infrequent Access. If you want to archive your data, you use Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive. And if you want to store your data in a single zone, you store your data in S3 One Zone Infrequent Access. And then we launched 2 new capabilities, 2 new ways how you can store your data. We launched S3 Intelligent Tiering. In fact, we launched that storage class 2 years ago. And then we added, just 2 weeks ago, 2 new access tiers to the Intelligent Tiering storage class. So now you can optimize your storage cost by up to 95%. And then we launched S3 and Outposts. So if you want to keep your data local in your on-premise environment, you can use an Outpost, and you can use now object storage with the S3 API on an Outpost. So 2 new features. Let's talk about these features. Let's talk about why so many customers are interested in S3 and why they want to use the S3 API. So customers tell us they really love the S3 API. They like the way how it works. They like the way how they can innovate with their applications. At the same time, some customers told us that sometimes they want to keep their storage locally. They want to keep it in an on-prem environment. And that's exactly why we launched Amazon S3 on Outpost. So now with Amazon S3 on Outpost, you can store your storage locally for performance requirements or data residency requirements. And when you think about it, you can add 48 or 96 terabytes of S3 storage on an Outpost. All your storage is encrypted by default. You have very similar features like S3 security features like you have today in S3. And you can move your data between an Outpost and an AWS region. And let's talk about how you can do that. The way you can do that is with AWS Data Sync. So if, for example, you have your storage in an Outpost and you want to back it up into a region, you can use AWS Data Sync and easily move it up. The same is true if you have your storage in an AWS region and you want to move it to an Outpost, for example, to perform some analytics workloads, which are very close to your compute on-prem, then you can do that. You can just easily, with AWS Data Sync, move your storage from an AWS region in an Outpost. Again, it's the same S3 API. It's very, very simple to use. So one thing customers really like about it, that now they have new use cases where they can use S3. So think about two examples. Think about in the healthcare industry, sometimes you don't want to move patient data out of a hospital sometimes, or out of a certain area. So in that case, you can use an Outpost, store S3 in Outpost, store your data, and then keep it on-prem. Or another example is if you're in the manufacturing industry and you want your storage very close to your manufacturing process. Now with S3 and Outpost, you can do this. Okay, so let's move on and talk about intelligent tiering. Intelligent tiering is really a new storage class we launched about 2 years ago. And it's a very popular storage class. Customers really love it for data lakes because with data lakes, what you have is oftentimes it's very hard to predict access patterns. Sometimes access patterns change over time. And what intelligent tiering is doing, it monitors your storage on a very granular object level. And then if it's accessed, it's in the frequent access tier, and it automatically moves down to an infrequently accessed tier. And so customers really like that storage class, and they have told us that over time, sometimes objects get really rarely accessed. So they get so rarely accessed that they would like to archive them. And that's why we added storage there in November 2 new access tiers to the intelligent tiering storage class. We added archive access as well as deep archive access. And so with those new storage tiers, you can now save up to 95% on your storage cost automatically. Again, intelligent tiering is doing all the work for you. There are no overhead cost. There are no retrieval fees. There are no lifecycle fees. So intelligent tiering really optimizes your storage cost. Let's take a look how it's working. As I said before, intelligent tiering has 4 access tiers now. It has a frequent access tier and an infrequent access tier with low latencies and millisecond access. And then you can enable 2 archive access tiers, archive access and deep archive access. And so once you don't access your storage for 30 days, it moves from the frequent access tier down to the infrequent access tier. And then after another 60 days, it moves further down into an archive access tier. And then after another 90 days, it moves further down into a deep archive access tier. So what we see customers doing is they now use intelligent tiering as their one storage class because it really has like low latency, high throughput when you need your data, and the lowest cost in the cloud at $1 per terabyte when you want to archive your data automatically. So a very powerful storage class. And you can enable those 2 new archive tiers very easily in the console. So let me show you. What you can see here on the screen, it's very similar how it looks like in your console. So you can just enable those 2 archive tiers on a prefix or on a bucket or on an object tag level. And then you can say, if you want to keep your data longer in the frequent or infrequent access tier and want to archive it later, so not after 90 days, but maybe after 100 days or after 120 days, up to 2 years, you can do that. You can configure these days to whatever you need. And so it's one of the things we launched. It's one of the storage classes we see are very, very popular. And it's really something I encourage everyone to check out. Okay, so we talked about intelligent tiering, a new storage class. We talked about Outpost and S3 and Outpost. So let's talk next about something you really want if you want to move your analytics workloads on S3. Let's talk about Amazon S3 strong consistency. And so over the last 14 years, many customers have stored their data on S3 and have innovated on S3. And they really love the durability, the availability, and what S3 provides them. At the same time, customers told us they would prefer if the consistency model is stronger. So they would like strong read after write consistency to really being enabled to move analytics workloads on S3. And that's why we launched it. So we launched S3 strong read after write consistency for all objects, no matter if the objects are new or your existing objects. It's for all of your requests. and it's at no cost. And so let me show you what it really means. What it means is that you can write now immediately into S3 and know that whatever you write, you will also read. And so that's very powerful because the way how we have done it is, I already mentioned, there are no additional cost. But the other thing we have done is we re-architected the way how S3 is working, and we improved the performance of our index. And so what that provides you is strong read after write consistency. And in comparison to some other cloud providers, we don't do that by sacrificing performance. So there's no performance implication. And we also don't sacrifice regional isolation. And so it's a very, very powerful new feature. Lots of customers told us they like it for the analytics workloads. And let me show you 2 or 3 typical use cases why these customers use it. So if you have strong read after write consistency, as I mentioned already, it's really good for analytics use cases. And so one thing, for example, you can do is if you frequently update a configuration file, now you can do that and you know that immediately after you write it, you can read it. And the results are what you should expect. Another example is analytics workloads with Apache Hadoop or Apache Spark. It's very common that you list objects before you retrieve them. Now, by doing so, you want to make sure that whatever you write is also in the list. And so with strong read after write consistency, you can do that. And so we have many customers who really love that new feature and who really use it for storing even more on S3, especially around big data about analytics workloads. So I would kind of encourage everyone to check it out. In fact, there's nothing you need to enable. You don't need to switch anything. You need to not do any hardware change, any update. It just works. It's just there for you at no additional cost. So let's talk more a little bit about data management. We talked before about cost and performance and why so many customers choose S3 for cost and performance. But there's another reason, which is the very broad portfolio of data movement options. So when you look at what options we have, you can have a storage gateway to move your data into S3. You can have AWS Data Sync. You can have for all your streaming data, Amazon Kinesis services. And then you can have for your offline data, Snowmobile or Snowball Edge. And then more recently, we launched a new way how you can move your offline data into S3 with AWS Snowcone. And AWS Snowcone is a very small device. In fact, it fits in a backpack, and it's very durable. It's really ideal if you don't have great network connectivity, similar to all other Snow family devices. And we just launched it more recently. So check it out. It's another way how you can move your data into S3. Next, let's talk about what's happening with your data in S3. Let's talk about storage management. So we talked about cost, we talked about performance, and we talked about how you can move your data in S3. So let's talk next about what features do we have for managing your storage in S3. And so over the years, we launched several features. We launched storage class analysis to figure out what's the right storage class for your storage. We launched inventory to give you a full list of all objects and all metadata included. And we launched object tags and batch operations. So many features we have already launched. And then we launched 2 weeks ago AWS S3 Storage Lens. And so with Amazon S3 Storage Lens now, you get organizational-wide visibility into your storage usage as well as activity. And it's a very unique new feature. So let me talk a little bit more about why customers really like it. So oftentimes customers tell us they have large data sets in S3. They have large shared data sets across many accounts, sometimes hundreds of accounts, across many storage classes in different regions, and across thousands of prefixes. And in a shared data set like that, it can be sometimes challenging to manage the data effectively, to report on that data. And that's why we launched Amazon S3 Storage Lens, which is really like a new feature to give you organization-wide visibility and insights, and then you can act upon those insights. So what Lens is doing is it provides you up to 29 different metrics for your storage usage and activity, even more when you count the derived metrics. And then it aggregates these metrics on different levels, on organization level as well as account level, down to the prefix level. And so it provides you the ability to not only go back in time for 15 months, up to 15 months, but also like drill down into the different levels. And the way how you can do that is with a dashboard. So let me show you how Amazon S3 Lens is working. Amazon S3 Lens is a new dashboard. And in fact, you now have a default dashboard in your account. And the default dashboard in your account is for free. Now, for a lot of customers, that default dashboard is having all the information you need. It has storage information, it shows you trends over time, it has usage information. And then if you want, you can configure the dashboard and say, well, I would like to scope it only to a certain account, or I would like to only have it for a certain region. And so you can configure your dashboard however you want it. You can also upgrade the metrics to include additional activity metrics. And then what Lens is doing, it really aggregates all these metrics at all different levels, so you have an opportunity to analyze it. And to give you some examples, so there are many use cases in Lens, but the main use cases we oftentimes see, you get a good summary view of your storage. You get storage usage, activity, number of objects, number of buckets. You see trends and anomalies. So for example, it's very easy to spot when a certain prefix grows faster than another prefix, or if in a certain region more data gets deleted than another region. And then you get recommendations. So in addition to all the metrics, we also provide you recommendations on your data protection, as well as how you can optimize cost. And so these are really the use cases I'm talking this slide about: summary insights, outliers, data protection, and cost efficiencies. So lots of different use cases here. And I would encourage everyone, check it out, see how the feature is working. You can just go into your Amazon console, you can look into your account, you will see their default dashboard, and you can see what your storage is doing, how it's trending, and what insights you can get. So let me show you actually my favorite slide. My favorite chart in Storage Lens is this bubble chart. And what I really like to do here is you can, for example, look at all your buckets in a specific account, and the bubble size is how much storage you have in that bucket. And then you have two axes. And in this example, what you can see here is that on one axis you have the average object size, and on the other axis you have the retrieval rate, so how much your data is getting retrieved. And what that means is you can very easily spot the buckets which are hardly accessed and where the average object size is large and where you have a lot of storage. And so that's really a great starting point if you want to optimize your cost. So for example, if you have a large object size, if you don't retrieve your data very often, maybe SIA or intelligent tiering might be a great storage class. So it's something super interesting to look into. And at the same time, we've launched many new security features over the last years. And I want to talk about the new security features which we launched just recently. If you take a step back and think about all the security features we launched, then for one, we have invested to integrate S3 in existing AWS security features, such as Action Last Accessed for IAM, or Amazon Guard Duty in Amazon S3, or AWS X-Ray for Amazon S3. And so let me provide you a little bit insights into how these features work. So for example, what you can do now is with IAM's Action Last Access, you really get to know which IAM user has accessed which resource the last time. And so what you can do with that information, you can really tighten your S3 permissions. So for example, if you have a bucket which hasn't been accessed for a long period of time from a specific user, then chances are good that you can actually take the permission away from that user. And you can really tighten the S3 permissions that way. So a small feature I want to call out, really helpful to increase your S3 security overall. Then we launched Amazon Guard Duty for Amazon S3. So that's really a new level of visibility into access of data stored in S3. And then we launched the support for AWS X-Ray. And with that, with AWS X-Ray, it really allows customers to trace context propagation. And so what you can do with it is now you can follow essentially the request path, and you can see what's going on at the different services. And that's really useful if you have serverless applications, because with serverless applications, sometimes it can be hard to figure out where the problem is. And so now with AWS X-Ray and the support for S3, for example, you can figure out if there's a latency issue. And then you can see where the latency issue is. And you can drill down into that application and see if there is a problem, figure out what the problem is, and solve it. So one thing to call out here is now that AWS X3 supports Amazon S3. And then we launched 3 security features in S3. We launched S3 Bucket Owner Condition, we launched S3 Object Ownership Override, and we launched Amazon S3 Bucket Keys. So let me provide a little bit details what these features do and typical use cases for them. Let's start with Amazon S3 Bucket Owner Condition. And so Bucket Owner Condition really allows customers to validate the AWS account ID of the owner of an S3 bucket. And that's really helpful, for example, in a use case where you potentially write the wrong bucket name. And if you enable Bucket Owner Condition and you do that and you write the wrong bucket name accidentally because the name is very similar, then the put will fail. And so it really helps you to prevent accidental interaction with buckets which are owned by unexpected AWS accounts. So again, an S3 security feature which is very helpful, especially for data lakes or for shared data sets. Next, we launched S3 Object Ownership Override. So today, and by default, an object which gets uploaded into a bucket is owned by the account which uploads that object. Now, if you have a shared data set, and if you have a data lake where multiple users read and write from a specific bucket, then sometimes you really want to standardize your permissions. You want to make sure that the bucket owner is also the owner of all the objects. And so with Object Ownership Override, you can do that now. And now, once you have done that, once you have enabled that, you enforce ownership by adding a bucket policy to require that all Amazon S3 puts, or all put operations, include this bucket owner full control canned echo. And once you have done that, once you know that all objects in your bucket are owned by the bucket owner, you can still use resource-based bucket policies to really share out and manage access to these objects if you want. So again, a very useful security feature I encourage you to check out. And then finally, let me talk a little bit more about Amazon S3 Bucket Keys. So many customers today use KMS management, key management service, as a simple way to encrypt their Amazon S3 objects. And it's a great way. So what's happening behind the scene is that for each request, each custom request, there's a separate request from S3 to KMS to get a key. And so imagine if you do a lot of requests, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of requests, then that might have an impact on your cost because each request costs you. Now, that's the reason why we launched Amazon S3 Bucket Keys. So you have one key for a bucket. And so each request does not imply a corresponding request to KMS, but instead a bucket key is stored in S3. And so in summary, that feature allows you to improve performance as well as to decrease cost. And in fact, you can save cost by up to 99%. So next, we want to talk a little bit more about scalability and availability. And so we talked before at the beginning of this session about why so many customers really want to use S3 and why they store the data in S3. And one of the reasons is because the way how S3 is architected. So it stores your data automatically in multiple availability zones. And so it provides you this high resiliency at the same time as high availability. And in some cases, customers want to make sure they also replicate, in addition to that, their storage into another region for resiliency reasons, or to get low latency, or to protect against some bad actors. And so that's why we have S3 Replication. And so S3 Replication, it's really a fully managed low-cost feature that allows you to copy storage from one bucket into another bucket. And so today we already have same region replication, we have cross-region replication, and we have replication time control. And so with same region replication, you can replicate your storage within the same region. With replication time control, you can have an SLA on your replication. And with cross-region replication, you can replicate from one region into another region. And then over the last weeks, we launched new features. We launched multi-destination replication. So now you can automatically replicate into many regions. We launched two-way replication. So now you can sync the replica and the metadata changes between two regions and two buckets. And we launched replication metrics and notification. So now you get three metrics, the number of objects, the number of bytes pending, as well as the latency replication. And these three metrics are part of that package. And so now with these features, replication becomes an even more powerful feature, and customers use it for different use cases. So for example, multi-destination replication, you can maintain multiple copies of data in the same or in different regions. With multi-destination replication, you can also create shared data sets. So if you have users in different regions, in different areas of the world, you can move your storage very close to the area to get low latencies. And with two-way directional replication, you can really sync the replica changes. You can create, again, shared data sets across multiple regions and make sure the data stays in sync. And so let me provide you one very real example, one use case we've seen, which really highlights how customers use the different features. So think about a financial company, financial industry company, who has one source bucket in the US East, and they want to have customers reading and writing from the US East, and then some customers reading from another region, let's say in Asia, in Tokyo. And so what this customer is doing is they use multi-destination replication to replicate into the AP Northeast 1 region. So customers get low latencies if they want to read it from that region. And at the same time, they replicate in the US West 1 region for protection against a bad actor. And then they use RTC, replication time control, to protect the replication time and to get an SLA on the replication where they want to have it for their customers. And they use replication metrics to make sure they understand what got replicated into the US West 1 region. And then in addition to that, because replication works really well with all different storage classes, they can now use different storage classes. You can use intelligent tiering in your AP Northeast 1 region because you know sometimes customers will read from that region. And you can use Glacier Deep Archive, a very low-cost storage class for the US West 1 region because you know customers don't read it there in general. And you use S3 Standard in the US East 1 region because you have a lot of reads and writes. And so that's just one example what you can do with Amazon S3 Replication. Okay, let me put it all together. So we have talked about many new features in S3 today. We talked about S3 intelligent tiering for data lakes and how you can optimize your cost. We talked about strong consistency for your performance. We talked about S3 and Outposts. We talked about many ways how you can really move your data into S3. And just as a reminder, we just heard about today in our leadership session, coming soon is S3 support for private link. So now with that new feature, which will come soon, you can also move your data from on-prem into S3 without leaving the private network. And so a very anticipated feature, stay tuned, coming soon. And we talked about S3 Storage Lens, a new feature, how you can, get a good understanding of your storage usage and activity. We talked about many security features from object owner condition to object ownership override to S3 bucket keys. And we talked about 3 new replication features with multi-destination replication, two-way directional replication, and new replication metrics. So many new features which we have launched over the last few weeks. But as always, we say in Amazon, it's always day one, and we always like to hear your feedback. And so I believe there's lots of great stuff out there. I had a really good time. From my side, I want to say thank you. That's a wrap from my side. Thank you for using S3. Thank you for helping us to innovate. And I hope you enjoyed the session. Please give us feedback. Thank you very much.